Look at the person sitting next to you. Lean in a little and notice the tiny details most people miss, the slight pull in the jaw, the small shift in posture, the blink that comes a fraction too fast, the face trying very hard to stay still. In the study of human behavior, the most dangerous person in the room is almost never the loudest one. It is not the person demanding attention, flashing status, or filling the air with stories about their own greatness. We are trained to see the narcissist as the top predator in relationships, the final boss, the one everyone should fear. And yes, the narcissist can be destructive, but they are also predictable. They move in loops of validation, control, image management, and ego defense. If you know what to watch, their pattern starts glowing in the dark, loud, fragile, repetitive. Their next move is usually drawn by their insecurity before they even make it. But there is another figure in this story, a quieter one, a hidden variable most people fail to notice until it is too late, the empath. For months, sometimes for years, the empath sits inside that dynamic, looking soft, patient, forgiving, and endlessly understanding. To the narcissist, that reads as weakness. It looks like compliance. It looks like someone who will absorb every insult, excuse every offense, and hand out one more chance forever. The narcissist sees that and relaxes. They think they have found a permanent source of emotional fuel. They think the game is over. But what they do not understand is that while they were busy performing, bluffing, provoking, and draining the room with childish control games, the empath was quietly learning everything. Not on purpose at first, not like a plan, more like a deep nervous system recording every detail. The empath was not only feeling the pain, they were collecting data. They learned what tone means danger. They learned what look means insecurity. They learned what topic makes the mask slip. They learned where the bragging comes from, where the rage begins, and what shame sits underneath the performance. And then one day a line gets crossed, not loudly, not dramatically, just one push too far, one lie too many, one final wound that flips the internal switch. And when the person who once felt everything suddenly decides they feel nothing for you at all, the whole room changes temperature. Pay attention here, because this is where most people miss the turn. The soft mirror becomes a sharp edge. The patient listener becomes a calm observer. And the narcissist, who thought they were playing a simple game, suddenly finds themselves standing in front of someone who can see right through them without blinking. If you have ever seen a truly fed-up empath detach, you know it does not look like a meltdown. It looks like stillness. It looks like a door closing with no sound. It looks like the air leaving the room. This is where the narcissist starts losing without realizing it. They are used to tears. They are used to over-explanations. They are used to guilt, bargaining, panic, and emotional chasing. Their entire playbook depends on the other person still caring enough to react. That is the fuel line. That is the power source. But the empath, after absorbing more than any healthy person should, reaches a final internal threshold where survival becomes more important than understanding. The emotional circuit cuts, the warmth goes offline, the care that kept trying to rescue, repair, and reinterpret every cruelty simply burns out. But here is the part that makes this shift so dangerous. The sensitivity does not disappear. The perception does not shut down. The radar is still on. The empath still notices tone, timing, stress signals, fake confidence, hidden fear, changes in breathing, forced eye contact, and every weak point in the performance. The difference is that now the data is no longer connected to a soft heart trying to make peace. Now it is connected to a cool, clear, analytical mind that is no longer invested in protecting the other person. And that changes everything. Suddenly, the charm does not charm. The guilt trip does not land. The gaslighting falls flat like a stone thrown at thick glass. The emotional hooks that used to sink in now slide right off. Stay with me, because this is the exact moment the balance of power flips. The narcissist still thinks they are standing in the same room with the same person, but they are not. They are staring at someone who has stopped participating in the illusion, someone who is no longer asking, hoping, or begging, someone who can now see the pattern with brutal clarity. The narcissist attacks in broad strokes. They go generic. They call you ungrateful, crazy, difficult, too sensitive, impossible to please. It is clumsy. It is loud. It is meant to create confusion. But when a detached empath finally speaks, they do not swing wildly. They do not waste motion. They use precision. They already know which sentence reaches the wound under the ego. They know which truth bypasses the armor. They do not need volume. They need accuracy. And when truth is delivered with flat eyes, relaxed posture, and zero emotional charge, it hits harder than rage ever could. To really understand why this works, you have to look beneath the surface and study the false baseline the narcissist builds in their mind. When they first meet an empath, they do not see depth. They see tolerance. They see patience. They see a person who adjusts to keep the peace, who absorbs discomfort without exploding, who tries to understand instead of punish. In the narcissist's internal system, that gets translated as weakness. They mistake emotional regulation for lack of strength. They confuse restraint with inability. They see someone choosing peace and assume that person is incapable of war. That is the first major error. Then comes the second. Because the empath often responds to tension with reflection, to hostility with de-escalation, and to manipulation by trying even harder to fix the problem, the narcissist grows comfortable. They think they have measured the entire person. They think they know exactly how far they can push, exactly what words will get a reaction, exactly how much pressure the structure can carry before it bends and returns to shape. To them, the empath becomes a readable asset, a dependable emotional battery, a fixed object in the room, and that false confidence is where the trap is built. Because what the narcissist is really watching is not weakness at all. It is endurance. It is discipline. It is advanced emotional control. The empath is not silent because they are empty. They are silent because they are processing on levels the narcissist cannot imagine. While the narcissist is performing surface-level power moves, the empath's nervous system is logging every twitch, every contradiction, every sudden mood swing, every lie that changes shape, every moment when the grand story cracks and shame leaks through. The narcissist thinks they are hunting in the dark, but they are actually under observation the whole time. Every tantrum gives away a trigger. Every boast reveals an insecurity. Every overreaction points to a wound. Every act of projection leaves fingerprints. And because the narcissist believes the other person is permanently trapped in a role of submission, they keep exposing themselves. They burn through grace without noticing. They spend patience like it will never run out. They mistake being tolerated for being safe. And that is why the collapse shocks them so deeply. It was not sudden at all. It only looked sudden from the outside. In truth, the shift had been building silently for a long time. The file was being filled, the map was being drawn, the expiration date was getting closer every day. And once it arrives, the person they dismissed as harmless becomes the one person in the room who knows exactly where the structure is weakest. When that final boundary is crossed, the change can look almost supernatural if you do not understand the mechanics. 1 second, the empath is still trying to hold the relationship together with patience, grace, and emotional labor. The next second, something inside goes still. The internal noise stops. The mental fog clears. It is like a power grid hitting overload and then protecting itself with a clean shutdown. For a long time, the empath has been carrying emotional voltage that would overwhelm most people. They have been translating cruelty into context, disrespect into pain, confusion into explanation, and chaos into something they can survive. They keep hoping meaning will appear if they just endure a little longer. But no system can carry that strain forever. Once the limit is hit, the brain does what it must do to survive. It reallocates. The person stops trying to feel through the damage and starts seeing through it. The warmth fades. The concern disappears from the face. The blinking slows. The posture settles. The eyes flatten into something almost clinical. This is the moment the narcissist feels, often for the first time, that they are not in control of the emotional weather anymore. And because they are blind to internal changes until those changes affect them, they usually do the worst possible thing next. They escalate. They bring in the usual weapons: rage, blame, pity, threats, love bombing, revisionist history, sudden tears, big promises, anything that once worked. But now it all lands on a person who is no longer hooked into the old dynamic. The mirror does not absorb impact anymore. It reflects calmly, cleanly, without helping. This is what makes the shift terrifying. The empath does not become chaotic. They become exact. Once the emotional static dies down, all the information gathered across the relationship lines up at once. The lies connect. The tactics repeat in clear patterns. The weak points become obvious. The mask becomes transparent. And the narcissist, who built their confidence on the other person's emotional investment, suddenly feels the floor disappear. They sense the loss of control before they fully understand it, which is why their behavior often turns frantic. They try harder. They push faster. They throw more noise into the room. But all that really does is confirm the map the empath already made. If you are still with me, this is the part that matters most. The fed-up empath does not need to win loudly. They only need to stop feeding the illusion. The moment that happens, the narcissist begins collapsing under the weight of their own exposed pattern. What has really been developing inside that relationship is a huge information imbalance. And in any psychological struggle, the person with the better map has the advantage. The narcissist likes to think they are the only one studying the room, the only one testing reactions, finding soft spots, and locating levers of control. But their methods are repetitive, predictable, heavy-handed. They are constantly revealing themselves while believing they are hidden. The empath, by contrast, often gathers information without even trying to. They hear the crack in the voice that comes before the rage. They notice the tiny panic after a joke hits too close to the truth. They remember the stories that change depending on the audience. They feel the shift between fake confidence and real fear. They register the exact moments when admiration is desperately needed and the exact moments when criticism feels fatal. Over time, this creates an incredibly detailed psychological profile. The narcissist leaves clues everywhere. A theatrical outburst reveals an old injury. An obsessive need to be right reveals deep instability. A small insult that gets an oversized reaction points straight to shame. A bragging speech that sounds too polished usually covers an internal collapse. The empath absorbs all of it, quietly, consistently. The narcissist thinks they are shaping the game, but in reality, they are dropping blueprints with every move. By the time the empath detaches, they often know the narcissist better than the narcissist knows themselves, because the narcissist lives in constant denial while the empath has been watching the unedited version from very close range. That is why a fed-up empath does not need to guess. They do not need dramatic speeches, emotional chaos, or endless argument. They know the exact pillar holding up the image. They know which false belief keeps the grand mask standing. They know where the deepest insecurity sleeps. And when they decide to use that knowledge, they do not swing wildly. They choose one truth, maybe two. Simple words, clean delivery, no visible anger, no extra explanation, just a direct statement aimed at the place the other person has spent their entire life trying to hide. That level of precision is devastating because there is no easy defense against it. Rage can fight rage, manipulation can fight confusion, but clear truth, spoken by someone who is no longer emotionally available, is another thing entirely. It strips away the script. It leaves the narcissist naked in front of the one person they were sure they had already defined, controlled, and contained. And once that certainty breaks, panic usually rushes in fast. Now let's strip the language down even more. People talk about empathy like it is only softness, only kindness, only care. But empathy is also perception. It is a powerful ability to read inner states, notice emotional patterns, and sense what another person is trying not to show. When that ability is tied to compassion, it looks warm, it looks forgiving, it looks generous. But when compassion finally shuts off for survival, the perception remains. And that is where things turn sharp. The radar becomes targeting. The same person who once understood your pain in order to protect the bond can now understand your pain without needing to protect you at all. That is why a detached empath can become so unsettling to a manipulative person. The narcissist usually survives conflict through confusion. They thrive when the room is noisy, when emotions are high, when narratives get scrambled, when blame can be shifted and reality bent. But cold perception ruins that environment. It brings silence. It brings focus. It names the pattern without participating in it. The empath no longer looks at the fortress of image and grand talk and sees power. They see the fear machine inside. They see the childlike panic pulling the levers. They see the desperate hunger for validation. They see the cracked self-esteem dressed up as superiority. And because they see the mechanism, they know exactly where the weak joints are. This is not about cruelty for sport. It is not about becoming a monster. It is about what happens when a person who understands you deeply decides they are done cushioning the truth. They can describe the pattern with calm, devastating accuracy. They can say the one sentence that exposes the whole structure. They can look at the performance and refuse to applaud, refuse to fear it, refuse to even react to it. That indifference hits like a storm because the narcissist depends on emotional reflection to feel real. Remove the reflection and the image starts breaking apart. This is why the final stage is so different from normal conflict. It is not loud, it is surgical. It is not two people fighting over a story. It is one person stepping out of the story entirely and leaving the other one alone inside their own exposed machinery. And if you have ever watched someone lose control because their usual tricks no longer land, then you already know how frightening silence can become when it is backed by perfect understanding. The end of this kind of dynamic is rarely explosive in the way people expect. The narcissist expects one more argument, one more emotional scene, one more chance to twist the narrative and turn noise into power. That is their arena. That is where they know how to survive. They can use shouting, tears, blame, confusion, and chaos like tools. They can weaponize your reaction and then point at it as proof that you were the unstable one all along. But the fed-up empath does something else. They step out of the arena. They stop feeding the theater. They create a silence that is not passive at all. It is active withdrawal. It is the removal of energy. It is the closing of every emotional door the narcissist once used for access. And to a manipulative person, that kind of silence feels like suffocation. Because what they need most is not love. It is relevance. It is response. It is proof that they can still move your inner world with a word, a glare, a threat, a plea, a memory, a promise. When they look at the person who used to absorb everything and now find only calm indifference, the crisis begins. They try the old scripts, maybe sudden tenderness, maybe rage, maybe victimhood, maybe dramatic collapse, maybe a final accusation designed to pull guilt out of you, but every move falls into empty space. No panic, no long explanation, no desperate defense, no emotional oxygen, just stillness, just distance, just a face that says the connection is over even before the body leaves the room. Don't miss this part. The silence is not weakness. It is the loudest boundary some people will ever meet. It tells the narcissist the most unbearable truth of all, that their power was conditional, their control was borrowed, and their importance existed only as long as someone kept emotionally funding the illusion. Once that funding stops, the structure starts caving in. The manipulator becomes erratic because their tools suddenly look childish in open light. Their confidence frays. Their mask slips. Their sense of self starts wobbling without an audience to hold it up. And through all of it, the fed-up empath often looks almost peaceful. Not triumphant, not cruel, just done. Deeply done. The kind of done that does not need to announce itself twice. And that is why the quiet exit is often more devastating than any loud revenge could ever be. The fed-up empath does not need a dramatic final speech. They do not need to win the crowd. They do not need to expose every lie one by one, although they could. What destroys the illusion most completely is something far simpler. They stop caring in the place where they once cared the most. They pack their things. They close the door. They block the number. They stop explaining. They stop translating your cruelty into pain they can carry for both of you. They stop trying to save what you kept trying to poison. And in that calm, the narcissist is left alone with the one thing they spent a lifetime avoiding, the hollow echo of their own unfinished self. That is the real collapse. Not the shouting, not the begging, not the dramatic scene. The collapse is being seen clearly by the one person who understood you best and then realizing that person is no longer moved by you at all. No fear, no pity, no hope, no pull, just clean emotional absence. For the narcissist, that can feel like psychological death because the mirror they depended on has gone dark. The room no longer reflects them back as powerful, needed, central, or unforgettable. It reflects nothing. And nothing is what they fear most. So never mistake gentleness for helplessness. Never confuse patience with lack of power. Never assume the person choosing peace is incapable of ending the war. Some of the most dangerous people in the world are not the ones who rush toward conflict. They are the ones who survive it quietly, study it deeply, and then leave it so completely that the other person is forced to face themselves without protection. That is the twist no manipulator wants to believe until it happens. The person they dismissed as soft was never powerless. They were simply merciful, for longer than most people could be. But mercy has a limit. Grace has an edge. And once that edge is reached, the loudest force in the room can be reduced to background noise by one calm stare, one final truth, and one silent step away. If you really understand human behavior, then you already know this ending was never about revenge. It was about removal. It was about the moment the target stops being a target. It was about the instant the source of supply becomes the witness of collapse. And by the time the narcissist sees it clearly, the empath is already gone.